So lately I've been studying the Gospel of John and something that stood out to me that I can't believe I've never noticed before. So whenever you're reading the Gospels, it's like Jesus is he sounds pretty harsh when he talks to the Pharisees, and he's often stirring up trouble with them. He purposefully does stuff that he's not supposed to do, which it's kind of ridiculous in a way, because it's like, he had this guy who had a shriveled hand stand up in front of everybody on the Sabbath, and then he asked the question, is it lawful to do good or evil on the Sabbath? And they won't answer because they've got a vendetta. They were already looking for a reason to accuse him, and then he heals the guy. So he purposefully does things to rock the boat. And I've always looked at that and thought that Jesus probably, you get the idea that he didn't like them very much. And I don't know why it never occurred to me, because time and time again in the Gospels, Jesus will really explain things to the Pharisees. So he speaks their language because they're lovers of the law, and the law to them is like the Torah, which is the Pentateuch. It's the first 5 books of the Bible. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So that's their did I get 5? I hope so. But that's the law. And then they say that they follow Moses. So they're like, no, we don't, we're followers of Moses. Moses is our father, and God is our father, and Moses is our leader, as it were. I'm paraphrasing badly, but basically that's who they look to as an authority, is Moses. And so, but Jesus takes the time, like when his disciples were picking heads of grain. So his disciples were picking heads of grain and eating them, which is not allowed. You're not allowed to prepare food on the Sabbath. So they're breaking the Sabbath by working for their food. And the Pharisees are like, look, you're sinners. Look, your Pharisee, or your followers are doing what's not lawful on the Sabbath. And Jesus tells them about David. He said, have you not read that David, King David, your hero, King of the Israelites, King of Israel, when he was hungry, he went into the temple and he ate the consecrated bread. So the bread that was only supposed to be, it was reserved for the priests. He ate it and he gave it to his friends. So, my disciples are hungry on the Sabbath. What of it? And he went on to say, and by the way, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. So there's that. But over and over again, he actually did apologetics with them, where he used the scriptures to teach the Pharisees, which is pretty humble of him. I mean, he could have just rolled his eye. Literally, he's the creator of the universe, and he can do what he wants. He is the Lord of the Sabbath, and he is the law. But he was so humble that he took the time to explain these things, to explain the scriptures to the Pharisees, and read the scriptures to the Pharisees, which was pretty amazing. And when you think of how humble, because Jesus was really humble. He's born, everything about his life does not speak to a power over. It speaks to his love of freedom, that he knows it is the only way to have love, true love, is freely chosen. Love has to be freely chosen. There's no such thing as love that isn't freely chosen. There's actually no such thing as a good thing without freedom. So you look at any good thing, and if you make it coercive, doesn't matter what it is, it's no longer good anymore. So take work, you remove the freedom, now it's slavery. take sex, remove the freedom, now it's rape. If you take charity, remove the freedom, now it's extortion, theft. There is no good thing that is not inextricably, by definition, bound to freedom. And that is also true of love. And so with Jesus, when he died on the cross, the reason he died on the cross is twofold. Obviously, with all the injustice in the world, and somebody had to pay for that, and he wants us to forgive, and he also loves us enough to overlook everything. He loves every person enough to overlook everything they've done wrong. And yet we are hardwired for justice. We know that it's not just for crimes to go unpunished, as it were. We know that's the truth. Every filmmaker knows that. You watch John Wick and they kill the puppy, and then they know they have you itching for justice, because humans are wired for justice, and it's ingrained in us, and we're looking for someone. When something horrible happens, we're looking, someone's got to pay, right? That's what we're thinking. Someone's got to pay. Well, whenever you're thinking someone's got to pay, and what was the price, then that's why, if you look at the cross and see how gruesome his, even just the Roman flogging, which he got before Pilate even convicted him, before Pilate didn't. He said, I find this man innocent. But Pilate still ordered his execution, and he ordered him to be flogged before he had even ordered the execution. But a lot of people didn't survive a Roman flogging, because it was being whipped with there was metal shards on the end of the whips, and it just tore up there. It was just gruesome. And then the crucifixion too. So if you want to know what the payment looked like for the horrible things that happen in the world, Jesus was like, yeah, I'll pay it. And he paid for everybody, down to the worst sinner in hell, whatever that is. And we actually don't know. God makes it clear that we are terrible judges, because we judge based on what we can see with our eyes, which is just it's like only God knows what any person is doing with what they've been given and what they've experienced, what they're capable of, what they understand. It's like God is the only one who's capable of seeing the complete picture for any person. So we are terrible judges, which is why we really shouldn't participate in it. But we, and the more we get free of it, the more grace we're able to receive too, because anything that you judge, judge not lest you be judged. Well, you will judge what you, in yourself too, what you are unable to let go of, the judgment that you are unable to let go of other people, you will also judge in yourself. And so going back to the freedom that Jesus wanted us to freely choose him, everything about his humble entrance into this world, it spoke of wanting our freely chosen love. And when people act like our hearts are not a big deal, actually your heart is the whole deal. Literally, that is what Jesus wanted. When he was the reason he came in low and attempting to win us over, the only way that you can, gently and with, gently coming in low, coming in vulnerable. That the whole reason that he went to the cross and laid down all of his power, which obviously power is nothing. He has all the power. He doesn't need power. It's the biggest flex is to lay it all down. The biggest flex is to come in low, that you don't need to flex your muscle, that you know who you are. When you know who you are, you don't need to come in loud and flexing. That is a move. That's an insecurity. That's someone showing their insecurity when they have to come in loud and come in high. And when you are able to come in low because you know who you are, And that's what Jesus did. He came in low. He born in a manger, riding on a donkey, died a criminal's death. All of those ways were intended to win our hearts. And that's what he was doing. So your heart, our hearts, that's the prize. We are the prize. Our love is the prize. That is his inheritance. It's what he died for. It is the treasure that he died for, his inheritance. So when you turn your attention, and that's what God's been telling me over the past several months, is he's been encouraging me to wait on him. And I'm like, wait on you? What's happening when I'm waiting? Like, what am I waiting for? And there are a lot of verses there's 116 verses about waiting, and a lot of passages about waiting. So in Isaiah 40:31 is where it talks about those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. I don't have the verse. Let's see. Isaiah 40:31. Okay, but they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not grow faint. And so waiting on the Lord increases your strength. So that's biblical. God also told me, because when I spend time with him, he just tells me things too, and that's a cool thing. But so I asked him, why am I waiting on you? And he showed me a picture of a gym that I was a member of. Now it's a church. That gym has been turned into a church. But he showed me a picture of a gym that he's said that I am strengthened just simply by turning my focus to him, my attention towards him. And as I focus on him, I comprehend him. What we focus on is where our hearts, where our treasure is, because we're turning our attention, which is our treasure. Your attention is whatever you give your attention to. You're literally giving your energy, your attention, that is your treasure, as it were. And God receives that as his inheritance. So even your smallest, like your most feeble attempts at turning your attention towards the Lord, don't underestimate how much he appreciates that. I don't know about you, but I can be easily distractible by my phone, or it's usually my phone, and yet God's not. He said he didn't come into the world to condemn the world. He came into the world to save the world. So when we have this idea, a lot of people have this idea that God's always mad at them. And God's always accusing them. And the accuser is the accuser. The accuser of the brethren is Satan, still Satan, and us. So people are very judgy and finger pointy, and we are very finger pointy at ourselves. We shame ourselves, we judge ourselves. But God said he didn't come into the world to shame the world. He literally just wants your heart. That's all he wanted. That was the big prize, was your heart. He didn't want your slavery. He didn't want your slavery. He could have easily turned everybody into slaves. God, he could flex his muscle and do that. But obviously somebody who comes in as a baby, riding on a donkey and dying a criminal's death, was not coming to create slaves. He came to win your heart and have it freely. And so one of the things, so I'll go back to, so waiting on the Lord, he said that it strengthens us. And the other thing that he showed me was when you fill up your tank with gas, and this is kind of more in line with, in the New Testament, there are a lot of references to having your oil, like making sure that you have plenty of oil. There's the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, and the foolish virgins are out of oil. Basically, they haven't spent enough time with the Lord. They haven't spent enough time focusing on the Lord. And what the Lord showed me was a gas tank, that when you put the nozzle into your car and you fill up with gas, you don't see the gas going into your tank, but you know that your tank is being filled. Your tank is being filled, and so you know that that's happening, and that's what happens when we turn. That's what he said. It happens when we turn our attention towards him. And waiting on the Lord is really powerful, according to biblically. You know, like the reference. So Isaiah 31 or 40:31 is one reference, but then a pretty dramatic reference is in Exodus when Moses gets the 10 Commandments, and it's in Exodus 24 is when he goes up to the top of the mountain and he waits on the Lord, and he spends the first 6 days just waiting on God. So he goes up the mountain and he spends 6 days just waiting. I don't know how many of us would be patient enough to wait for 6 days without something happening. He was in a glory cloud, so that's pretty cool. So he knew something was going on, right? Because he was in a glory cloud. I don't know about you. I have been in a visible glory cloud, and I have to say, it's pretty cool. So 6 days of that, I could probably, I would be persuaded. I don't think I need to be persuaded. I think that I'd be down for that. And then, so after 6 days of waiting, then, what is it? Then Moses climbed up the mountain, and the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled down on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, the Lord called to Moses from inside the cloud. To the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, the glory of the Lord appeared at the summit like a consuming fire. Then Moses disappeared into the cloud as he climbed higher up the mountain. He remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So that is pretty wild, and I can't imagine what he was like. And they said that Moses, so he spent so much time in the presence of the Lord. Moses, when he was old, I'd have to look up the reference. Moses didn't have wrinkles, and he was strong like a young man when he was in his 80s. Essentially, God ended Moses' life. He ended Moses' life at a predestined time. He's like, you're actually not going into the promised land. The Israelites are going into the promised land, but you're not, so I'm ending your life here. But he didn't have wrinkles, and he was strong like a young man when his life ended. And I would bet that honestly, because he spent time with the Ancient of Days, because people put so much emphasis on age, on the number of years on this world, which is actually the pattern of this world, because Jesus defeated death on the cross. He defeated death. It said that now in John 11:25 it says, and if you die, not when you die, if you die, that's an option. I mean, it was that there were people that didn't die even before in the Old Testament. Think how much more after Jesus defeated death and stole the keys of death and hell, how much more do we not have to die anymore? So Moses now, he lives as a young man, basically, and I wouldn't doubt it was because he was spending time with the Ancient of Days. And so going back to the Ancient of Days, people, now it doesn't refer to, we see, it's very, like an emerald rainbow around the throne and the Father, and, we have kind of abstract references, but people who have been to heaven, like people who have had near-death experiences and seen God the Father, most of them describe, there are different descriptions, but most of them describe God the Father as looking like a teenager. So God the Father, so the Ancient of Days, looks like, one person referenced, Kevin Zadai said he looks like he's about 16, and I've heard multiple accounts. He's probably the only one that I can actually name because I've listened to him enough. But apparently the Ancient of Days looks like a teenager. And so what is that to him then? What is age to him? Well, it's, like he literally is life itself. So he's the oldest oldest being in the universe, and he exudes life. So there's another good reason to wait on God, because somehow Moses, who spent 40 days and 40 nights on the top of the mountain, even before the time of Jesus, he had no wrinkles and was strong as an 80-year-old. So there's more motivation to wait on God. You get your tank full, get strengthened, and your youth restored, which I guess goes in line with the Isaiah 40:31 verse 2. But just wanted to encourage you. That's what God's encouraged me to do this year, and he's shown me a lot of things in that time, and he is humble and good, and it's, at the end of the day, what we really need to be convinced of to be protected from, because the enemy is tricky. He's really, if you think about it, he's tricky. He was able to trick Eve out of Eden. She was already walking with God. She was perfect, and all he had to do was get her to doubt the goodness of God. That's really all he had to do. He got her to doubt the word of God. God told her that if she ate from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, that she would die, and they did. They died the day that they ate it. They died spiritually the day that they ate it. And so Satan got Eve to doubt God's word to her, that would happen. He said, surely you won't die. He's just threatened by you. So Satan got her to doubt the goodness of God. And then he got a third of the angels to rebel. So if you don't think that Satan is tricky, he got a third of the angels in heaven to leave heaven and be in hell with him. He got Eve to fall from perfect God, from goddess perfection, and who knows how far we fell. We were probably telepathic beings that were capable of, all the things that you think about, like the most epic things that humans just barely touch on. That is who we once were before, and they even took 900 years to die, because they had been so immersed in life before their spirits died. So then it took 900 years for that to transfer from their soul and through to their body, which finally gave up. But if you think about how much life they were exposed to, that's why it took so long for their lives to end. So spend time with the life giver. Be in the presence of the life giver. Drink from the life giver. People talk about drinking, but it's really just focus on God and take him in, literally by your breath. Yahweh is it's literally like Yahweh. It's like your breath. It's like breathing in God. And so just wanted to encourage you, God has encouraged me. He's spoken to me in that time, and it'll have you can reap all kinds of benefits in your peace, and even in your physical body. Thanks for listening.